even that well hidden.
How was it not well hidden with searched everywhere?
Oh my gosh, there's holes everywhere.
That's pretty rare. They're bringing back Golden Apple Archipelago for the summer.
I didn't do that. I tried to stop them.
Scar?
Oh,
Scar?
hello, Grid. It's me, Scar. Where over here was it?
No, it's not around here. It's not around here. Everyone's just here. It's not around here. Don't. Is it not? Okay. No. It's not around here. No, there's no need to dig.
That's fine.
No.
It's not your land, though, is it?
Yeah. This is all my. You see me placing torches. This is my claim. I'm staking my claim.
I hope you're aware your base is on fire.
What?
Scar set it on fire trying to burn me. It's somewhere around here. It's somewhere.
No, it's not. It's not around here. I can't remember exactly where it is.
Get digging, boys!
Roll out. Where the heck is it?
We'll find it.
We will terraform this entire land.
You never find it. How do you know it wasn't just a ruse, huh?
We don't, but we'll find out.
Can't go back there now either.
Oh, colder. Ooh,
It cannot always be colder. You have to get warmer sometimes. I've got all 4 directions here.
colder.
Where the heck is this sugarcane?
I don't know, but the creepers are gonna help me find it.
Colder.
Ice cold.
Ice
cold.
Ice cold. No, there's no need. Joel, listen, we can make a deal. Look, how about I sell you some sugarcane, Joel? How about I sell you some sugarcane? How does that sound? Joel, I'll sell you some sugarcane.
Okay,
Joel, I will sell you some sugarcane! Joel, I will sell you some sugarcane! I say I will sell you some sugarcane!
Okay, Grid, I'll trade you 1 sugarcane for
Run,
1
Cleo,
sugarcane.
run!
Wait, did you pick any up? My inventory's full. I didn't get any! You got it? Nice. Oh, the key!
Let's go.
Go.
Let's go.
I will sell you some sugarcane!
Alright,
It's
some wheat.
Adrian.
This is what happens when you try and monopolize things. Monopoly is my
I
game.
got a new letter from an informant.
I
Looks like the
can't have
situation has
anything
changed.
nice. Good luck making the TNT though. Scar, there you go, the sugarcane.
That was a fantastic event.
You gave away the sugarcane?
Scar, where were you? What were you doing?
I was showing Impulse the Panda Reserve.
I was just saying, like, I want to move the farm. It's somewhere around here. You had walked off, and they were all spying on me, so they all just dug around until they found it. The sugarcane is gone. I thought I was talking to you, but you had walked off.
Well, I think Cleo tried to burn the place down, so I was fighting to keep the place from burning down.
Really, that's funny, because Cleo said that you tried to burn the place down by accident.
I mean, I don't know who lit it, because I have my suspicions. But in the end,
It's
I
getting
had
a little
to save
cold.
the place, and I was
Time to
calling
bundle up.
for assistance. And the only person that came was B-Dubs. He put down some water, which was nice of him.
Yeah. Scar, I have every drop of sand on the server. They can make as much paper as they like.
Korea, we gotta do something about the holes. Oh my god. Seriously?
Take it easy.
It's really loud. I'm
Okay,
gonna
maybe there's a little
Yes,
canyon left. 'Cause I mean,
Motion to
really painful.
compel.
That's why I was taking so much damage. I was drowning.
You want me to go and make sure there's no more sand?
I mean, yeah, you can go get it. Go get it.
Okay. That's such a big brain move.
I know,
What?
right?
How?
Oh, hey,
Scar,
Where's Green? I've got a gift for him. Apologies for stealing his sugarcane.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, a
It's
gift.
right here.
Yeah, this right here is Jimmy's horn.
Oh. Wait, so he's
Please
now
don't burn down
hornless?
the relationship.
This
That's
weather's got
what
me in
you.
the mood for
That's what
reciting
for
some
the horn.
laws.
You get to
Alright.
keep it.
See.
I got a
But
present
the
for you.
Commercial
relationships.
law
I got a
Leah,
present for
Chapter
you.
27, Section 6, Article
Oh,
3
such a
stipulates
nice
that...
little moment here.
Wait, what
What's
was
this
it?
for?
Oh my goodness, I've completely forgotten.
Block of sand.
What is wrong with me
Yeah.
today?
Is there no sand left on the
It's
server?
gold dust, that is.
Oh, I didn't know that. Maybe we should have collected some sand.
Yeah, I wish I did.
Incinerate! Shh! Animal test 6308.
So once again, we can bring them on and
Absorption
Jimmy will
test.
never respond.
Swirl, Mark 2.
Game's up. Game's over.
This is how villains are made, by the way. This is his origin story.
Oh, dude, Jimmy got further falling now. Further falling 4.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What?
I killed a baby for it. This is absolutely
Why did you
fantastic.
say that way? You want to read for a baby zombie?
It was a baby villager.
Yeah,
Yeah,
what?
Well, I was doing the mining down in the caves, and this baby came out of nowhere, and I sliced it down and got these super sweet boots.
Seriously, Scar.
I know, right?
Yeah, you better keep those.
Oh, I know. This is actually
Anyway,
super clutch.
the sand, the rest of the sand. Here.
Oh,
do you
yeah,
want-
I'm
do you want
going, I'm
This will be fast. Wait, Scar, this will be faster.
Okay.
So this is what drowning feels like on the outside. Well, in a way, I'm kind of glad that the sugarcane is taken care of, because it means I can actually actually farm it now. I can actually just make a farm out here in the open, and I don't have to worry about anything anymore. Yeah, this is a blessing in disguise. We have a monopoly still. They don't know. I mean, Joel will figure it out. He'll figure it out. He was very suspicious then. Also, my gift to Big B is now kind of everywhere. You know what? That feels good. That feels good to just get a farm out in the open, and I can farm it actively and have plenty of paper for all my sand. Scott, we're both drowning. We're going to drown twice as fast.
Oh, not twice as fast.
Quietly now.
Scott, I think that's it. That's
No,
like
two
trucks around.
Stand clear.
Why is he? Quick, as fast as you can. What's going on here, buds? Whoa, what's
Gotcha.
happening?
Oh,
What's happening? It's crazy time.
No.
Motion to
We're
compel.
getting a monopoly this time.
I'll let you
Yeah, we gotta make sure that there's just like one or two.
Absorption test. Animal test
Bro,
6308.
we've actually got a monopoly for the first time.
Oh,
Hey,
what a clutch thought on the sand.
Motion to compel.
Man.
Oh, there's another little bit over there. You gotta leave a little bit of sand, you know? Gotta
As
leave a
long
little
as they
bit.
can't make more than 2, then I'm fine with it.
What are you doing? Nothing. Trying to get out of this blasted hole.
You really need to make a ladder up here.
Yeah, a ladder would be wonderful.
Graham,
Am I still
read
banned?
the front sign.
Alright,
Look,
I'm gonna go and read it. I'm gonna go and read it.
You're banned.
Alright, look. Banned. I'm the only one banned.
Yes.
And I've got,
Hello, hello.
I got this.
Sunglasses, man.
Yeah, I traded mine away.
I've
You know what?
actually renamed it Jimmy's Horn because it's the original.
I want this donkey.
This is
Oh, okay, here.
Are you being serious?
Like this,
Yeah.
quick.
Joel gave it to me.
Big B.
Wait! Please, can I have it back, please? I traded.
Tim, I'll give you back the horn if I can be not banned.
Will you make that, like, chuck it on the floor, throw it on the floor?
Wait, okay, you break the sign and I'll throw it on at the same time. Ready?
Okay,
3, 2, 1. That's it? I'm not banned?
You're not banned. You're not
Yeah! Let's go!
Why am I not
No
banned?
banned players.
There's no banned Scar, I'm very low and not healing, and neither are you. Fat, what? He's fatty. Let's go.
Hey guys, careful, there's a warden coming. Careful.
What?
Hey, it's a warden! Look at how cute he is! He's so angry, too!
It's getting dark and scary and terrifying.
What is going on here?
Why is his head
Everyone
so
be careful,
wild?
it's coming. It's here.
Bring him into the ranch!
It's
Bring him into the
here.
ranch! Here he comes!
Oh my gosh.
How?
See, Green, here he comes around the corner!
Yeah, that's real.
Don't make any sound.
Now.
It's like an air fryer.
Yeah.
Hey, Fryer.
I just built the
I don't know what to do.
I'm surprised the wall is keeping this thing out. Not gonna lie.
Whose
I don't
idea
know
was
where
this
I
then?
meant this, though.
Jimmy, can you hear me?
Once.
I guess no, it wasn't mine. What are you talking about?
Great! Oh, he's in! Scott, run! He's in! He's after me!
Oh, please.
Open the door! Oh!
there's
Thank you
award.
for completing today's commission.
That's why there's
Here is
things.
your reward.
It's free!
Ad Astra
To
Abyssal.
the ranch! To the ranch!
He's back.
Oh!
Where do I go?
Just run to the
Oh,
ranch.
my word!
After me!
Oh,
He's still going for me. Yeah, oh yeah, he's going for me.
Oh, I'm heavy legged right now.
Oh, wow. Dude, we almost died there multiple times.
Nowadays, a little calf to pet.
The
Why do
most
you have to bring
important,
this?
the most important question is, what's its name?
Well, you'll find out. Go walk up to it.
No!
Oh.
That's true. How did you name that thing, Tango?
You know, science.
Oh, come on.
Mistake.
Just gonna
Joe!
Run, Joe.
Oh,
Joe!
oh, God, you do these things.
Just let the warden hang out. I think we're done with that, yeah?
Can we
just
go
let it-
protect the Monopoly,
Yeah.
Green? So if you die, you're not holding the entire Monopoly.
It's
Oh! That wasn't even the warden!
Oh,
No.
Oh no!
Oh,
no.
And they logged out.
oh, Big B.
Oh no! Wait, was
That work is also just
good?
going
Thanks.
half on the wildlife.
I mean, he's kind of protector of us in some case.
I wanted to play a game, but now it's just
Yeah.
pointless because there's.
Now the game is keep away from the warden.
Yeah, now
Now the game is destroy the ranch.
now the games don't get dead.
Don't get.
Should we warn Tango or just let him die?
Yeah, you know,
Absorption test. Stand clear.
Tango,
I couldn't see a thing.
I don't know. I couldn't see a thing for you because
I'm
it's
gonna
living
leave it
in
in
your
the
base.
ranch.
Yeah, it lives in your house.
Can't touch me.
Okay. Is it Jason?
Man,
No, but I'm staring right at him now. Dude, oh my gosh, Green, it's coming.
I think it's coming.
Put your
this
hand
event is
on your
annoying.
food just in case.
Oh, there he is! Oh, He's in.
Dude, I'm gonna look back around.
I can't see the floor. I'm gonna just hope there's water. Well, that's one way. Oh, I think that's enough excitement for one session. Don't you? I think that's enough. We just got a rogue warden that lives with us now, which is fun. And of course we have our first Reds, and it's our secret soulmate, Big B. I don't know where I stand with him now because he's red and all friendships are broken. But our secret soulmate's broken? I guess we'll find out.
Don't touch people.
Hey! Oh! No, let's go!
Oh no!
Oh, baby, it's so close to death.
Oh no!
What are they on?
Oh my god, that's the end of the episode! Stop now!
Wait, we can wash them into the water.
That's the end.
Wash him in, water guys. Wash him in.
sure, let's go get wet. Dang it. I promised I'd only get one Nagaraya. Here I am, though. Opening another pack.
Good roll. All right, maybe I'll take one more day off and knock out the rest of the work once I'm feeling up to it.
Yeah, why not?
If you have been paying any attention to the manga sphere at all, you might have noticed one thing about Koi Horikoji's hit shonen manga. Namely, that a lot of these recent chapters have been getting mixed reception. How did a popular darling like My Hero get to a point where each and every one of its plot points gets hyper-scrutinized and broken down? Or any enthusiasm regarding the series as being overshadowed by a general air of either cynicism or aggressive defensiveness? I cannot and will not speak for anyone else, but in my case, MHA has lost a lot of what made it special, and the mixed reactions to its final arc give me some degree of confidence that I'm not just entirely insane. Thus, I want to indulge in this general negative vibe a bit in order to figure out and elaborate on why, how, and when MHA lost the plot, figuratively and literally. One arc in particular stands out as the moment MHA broke, in my opinion. Spoilers for the manga, obviously. I guess we should first define what broke and broken even means in this context.
Come on out! Incinerate!
Judgments aside, builds a criteria.
Motion to compel!
So no, in fact, volumes are selling way higher than they ever did.
Oh.
So how can a story that still functions and still sells hundreds of thousands of books be broken? Maybe to you, it cannot. To me,
I want a frog. Can I have a frog in my teapot?
and money doesn't really matter to me when I try to assess how I perceive quality. It's just kind of not important to me.
I like frogs.
What I mean when I say MHA is broken is that it has lost something crucial. A codifying style of pacing, structure, and payoff that up until a certain point was the core of its identity, at least to me. MHA is broken because it lost that something that made it special. That made it My Hero Academia. So, I guess we better get around to describing what that something
Incinerate!
But to me, made MHA special is a specific intersection of three elements: preparation, deliberation, and consequence, as well as the intense, singular focus each of them receive.
And you got teleport back here after.
But their specific mix was what made MHA special to me. The majority of the series was structured in a way where current events were always preparing future events in a clear and deliberate manner, then follow up on them with believable and interesting consequences. The second element, deliberation, is especially crucial here. There was always a point, a purpose to the various narrative beats, purpose which was founded on solid planning and the willingness to make those beats have lasting impacts. And most importantly, that deliberation was not just for the sake of progressing the story, not just to move forward, because there was something interesting to be said here. Let's look at this structure through an actual example, or rather, a question. Why was it Ida and Todoroki who fought alongside Deku in the Stain arc? Dumb question, because those are the characters the author put there. Duh. But why them, specifically? The Stain arc is so early on, it could have been anyone else's brother who got hurt. It didn't need to be Tensei. You could have literally just made a brother up. At this point, we hadn't really seen most of the families. And of Deku's classmates, any one of them could have come to help out. Todoroki was not the only possible candidate. This is where deliberation comes in. There are established and narratively important reasons for it to be these two, and these two only. Ida is, fairly sneakily but nonetheless directly, established to be well off. His family is a central pillar of generational heroism, and also filthy rich. His familial legacy thus represents an outwardly ideal heroic dynasty, which is the perfect target for Stain's solo crusade. By harming Tensei and accusing him as a vestige of the system's corruption, Stain threatens to destroy Ida's whole framework of what heroism really is, and also attacks a core institution of heroism at large. At the same time, he is not wrong.
I'll remind you again.
Have gotten very wealthy off of a profession which pretends to be generally altruistic. This is a conflict Ida struggles to internally resolve.
Where's the thing
which is as much about what it means to carry a legacy as it is about heroism as a whole. A conflict which leads him down the path of attempted revenge. This clearly cannot stand. He needs to be stopped, saved by someone who can directly empathize with the weight of expectations, legacy, and emotional conflict. Oh, hey, Todoroki! Shoto is primed perfectly to help Ida because his shaky relationship to his father asks many similar questions, but also because he has recently learned to overcome them slightly, thanks to Deku. So, through this specific, seemingly random combination of characters, multiple narrative ideas are paid off in ways that feel natural and believable, without centering entirely on Deku, but still being an indirect result of his actions. He saved Shoto, which allowed Shoto to save Ida. And as a result, not only do the boys survive, they walk away with an increased sense of responsibility and self-reflectiveness, which causes both change and turmoil in all of them. So, we have preparation, the established narrative traits of these characters and events, which beckons deliberation, the specific positioning of these characters within events that allow their traits to shine, which in turn causes consequence, the behavioral lessons learned as well as the more critical look onto the hero's system. This example is a microcosm of how the majority of MHA used to function.
I picked them out of instinct.
By establishing aspects of its story and characters, sometimes explicitly, sometimes symbolically, the series prepares an itemized list of who cares about what topic and why. Then, when a story beat brings up ideas and themes that intersect with something pre-established, the series goes out of its way to have them link up and reverberate through the story. This structure is not revolutionary by any means, but it nonetheless made for an extremely satisfying reading and viewing experience, because it felt like you were being rewarded for paying attention and keeping track of who, what, and where, since that knowledge allowed you to predict and theorize in ways that felt tangible, less like you were grasping at straws, and more like you were playing chess against the author and keeping up. A story being predictable isn't by itself good, but a story being engaging and exciting to try and predict generally is. It makes you feel like part of the entire process. And when a prediction became fact, or even just very likely, you could revel in the possible consequences that plot point would have, as the story put strong emphasis on the long-term impact of its own plot points. From huge paradigm shifts like All Might's fight at Kamino to tiny mini-stories like Deku's Hands, it always felt like every moment of the story mattered. Seeing these moments put together to create a web of narratives that was founded on diligent preparation, deliberate writing, and consistent consequence, made the story just very cool and perfectly formed. And it felt like. Now, let's be clear here. This structure I just laid out was
Take it easy.
100% consistent all the time.
Animo test 6308. Stand clear.
Gotcha.
Gradually became more frequent as we approach the arc that broke the series. A great example of that is Kurogiri, whose twist has all of its prep work and actual substance outsourced to a spin-off, and thus doesn't conform to the model we created. And there are numerous other examples, because at the end, this is just a model. This is me, a random dude, trying to make sense of something after the fact. However, even so, these instances remain fairly rare and mostly concerned with smaller, less central parts of the narrative, while the heavy hitters still followed this 3-ingredient recipe. In fact, its strongest example came right on the cusp of the breaking point. Dabi. I will just go out and say it. To me, Dabi's dance and its associated flashbacks are the last part of MHA's old identity. One final hurrah before everything changed. But what a send-off it is. so meticulously prepared that everyone predicted it years before it happened, and yet so narratively deliberate and impactful that it was still hype as shit. Years and years of build-up and careful planning gave way to a stage where all the pieces, Endeavor, Hawks, the War, were in just the right, deliberate position for the trigger to be pulled and for the reveal to have massive effects on the already beaten and battered Hero system. Dobby had been, for the last few months, shown to be so much smarter and much more dangerous than on until then, and he was ready to enact his revenge. The structure's greatest hit.
Animal test 6308.
Just like comics. But as we were getting
Quietly now.
and while the war arc went on for a few years, the style already went
Stand clear.
signatures, one which to me is synonymous with the arc that broke MHA.
Boom boom.
Yes, I know the official start of the arc is a few chapters later, but shush, this is my video.
Before we even entered the main arc proper, things start changing.
Motion to compel.
After spending years to build up Dobby, going as far as hinting at larger plans beyond just his revenge, we suddenly get a combo line of plot developments aiming to ridicule and depreciate his character and his build-up. Not only is Genus not dead, Dobby has no contingency plan for this scenario, despite stating that he predicted this. Okay then. And before this had time to sink in, multiple things happen at once. Deku unlocks a new quirk, Mirio comes back, Compress reveals he is a descendant of one of the big three villain lords and annihilates his own ass cheek, and All for One possesses Shigaraki. More on all of that later. For now, with this salad of
Spoilers,
bizarre plot
god dang
decisions, the war ends, and we enter
I watched
Villain
this of my own
Hunt.
volition anyway.
This prelude already clues us in on one of Villain Hunt's main features. Its bonkers pace and general laissez-faire attitude towards honoring pre-established narrative elements and preparation. Deku is a vigilante now, so no time to lose. He raced from set piece to set piece, with very little in terms of actual downtime. This also applies to some rather crucial stuff, with Deku's mastery of the predecessor's quirks being essentially entirely skipped. Either way, while out hunting for villains that escaped in the very cool Tartarus prison break, Deku spirals down mentally, until his entire class shows up and subdues him, urging him to come home. While this is an exciting premise with balls-to-the-walls action, this is also the arc that broke MHA. And it does this by taking that narrative structure we discussed earlier and shooting it in the head. A constant factor to Deku's presence in the story is the state of his body. Much of his journey is determined by the various injuries he incurs and the threat of their consequences. In particular, we are continuously reminded of the severe damage to his arms and how the next big injury might paralyze them permanently. It is this threat that hangs over him for the majority of the series, pushing him to develop new fighting styles that are distinct from those his idol relied on. Again, we see preparation leading to a situation in which this character is pushed and directed in a deliberate manner, a journey dictated by the threat of consequence. And that threat loomed to become fact during the war arc, when an enraged Deku pummels Shigaraki relentlessly using his already damaged arms. We are once again reminded in the middle of this of what might happen if Deku overuses his arms again. It by all intents and purposes seems like the series is finally pulling the trigger on a plot point it has been flirting with for actual real-life years. It is ready to make reality of the threat of consequence. Whoops! No, actually, Deku is totally fine, and his body has magically acclimated to the strain, and he probably won't have to worry about it anymore. Now, while the explanation given here is logical enough, it nonetheless represents a complete abandonment of consequence regarding this plot element. What was the point of using Deku's physical condition as a guide rail for his development for all of those years, when the one time he actually oversteps it, the threatened consequence is just hand-waved away? The point is, who cares? We gotta keep moving. Look how cool Deku is now! Whoa! You could say that this is a tiny issue, that I am nitpicking. And you are right, but A, small issues add up if they become common enough. B, Many bigger narrative problems are often built on small, insular, but regular hiccups. And B, this isn't a one-time thing. Just like how our earlier example of the Stain arc was a microcosm of the series' general
One more.
approach to structure and causality, this too is a condensed but representative glimpse of MHA's post-war narrative structure. This begins a trend of how most of the plot elements within the arc are handled. Dobby's televised reveal was, based on its execution and just logic, supposed to completely erode and destroy the hero system, casting Endeavor and Hawks, two pillars of it, as irredeemable monsters. But instead, Hawks' guilt is weakened by Genus being alive, and Endeavor sees very little consequence from him being outed as an abusive asshole, besides some mean comments. In fact, the destroyed and broken world we see in this arc isn't really the result of the war arc at all. The chaos and destruction are caused by the prison break and the attack on the HPSC, both of which happen separate from the war. Not only that, but the actual post-war world of NHA receives almost no emphasis at all. Due to reasons we won't get into, Villain Hunt will likely remain the only arc to really have had the chance to traverse this broken world. And it is only 37 chapters long. By comparison, we spent almost 200 chapters in a post-communal world, which allowed the weight of losing the symbol of peace to truly breathe and show itself. Obviously, length is not how you automatically make a plot point good, but when we're talking about something as massive as a societal paradigm shift, time spent in that new world does equal emphasis. Kamino was a quiet devastation that allowed for extended exploration of how the system was failing. The war, by comparison, was a loud train crash, and its consequences should reasonably have deserved a similar emphasis, maybe even more, as it was a much more dramatic change. Thus, much of the build-up and deliberation that went into setting up the war and its various potential effects on the world are either castrated to barely factor into the series going forward beyond isolated details,
Seems like I should have
or hijacked by sudden, more influential developments.
stayed in
So,
I think I need to make one more because I gotta give something to
about
someone.
The state of the world. What is it primarily about then? It establishes early on that it wants to explore Deku's mental state, and that Japan's broken streets are a sort of externalized metaphor. This also means
Make
that
my
it would,
escape.
by necessity, have to explore his relationship to All Might. Throughout the story, it is consistently brought up that All Might is an unrealistic standard, an unreachable ideal whose pursuit only causes problems. We see this in Endeavor, in the post-Kamino tensions, and, most crucially, in Deku. His self-destructive recklessness and gotta-do-it-all attitude are continuously and explicitly stated to be a direct consequence of his admiration for All Might, and the latter's encouragement of a simple, sacrificial heroism.
Busted.
Incinerate!
In a sense, his reconciliation
Yeah.
with this being
Yeah.
and his existence as a deistic symbol did more harm than he imagined. Then,
Yeah.
in the war arc, we see Deku at his most reckless, his self-destructive heroism turning him into a raging mass of tendrils and wrath, pounding into his enemy with pure, furious abandon. This darker, toxic side of All Might's teachings is something the series had been building up for years, and Villain Hunt set out to finally explore its ramifications fully. Except it doesn't. We see Deku dirty, tired, battered, and bloody. We see him confused about his state of the world and his role within it, exhausted at the prospect of how much is riding on his shoulders. He's grinding himself into a muddy, smelly paste, trying to do everything himself. But while all of this is a good showcase of how the outwardly positive messages of All Might's example have affected him negatively, and while scenes of him leaving All Might behind are pretty well executed, it overall doesn't actually go anywhere. Much of his actual journey is just skipped over, and the moments we do get to see only serve to formulate a placid, damn, some villains are more evil than others, that's crazy. And for as much as it revels in how broken Deku is, the actual solution to this years-long bad mindset ends up being 2 speeches in a bath. All very sweet moments, but they ultimately don't address the core issue. They are saccharine declarations of camaraderie that aim to distract from the real problem. The fact that Deku is willing to kill himself if he thinks he can win through it. The arc, in fact, goes out of its way to never really address the self-destructive part of Deku, only his lone wolf attitude. The arc thus becomes more about vaguely teaching Deku to rely on others rather than to curb his penchant for reckless abandon. Thus, it ends with Deku trusting his friends, a far less interesting conclusion that is bookended by a celebratory bath scene that speedruns all possible character interactions in order to just quickly move on. The most interesting one, Deku talking to Uraraka after her emotional speech about him, gets the funniest excuse in all of MHA. She just do be sleeping.
Sometimes the law is compatible with human nature, but sometimes the two conflict. Balancing the two is a discipline in its own right.
Great scene with Stain. His reunion with Deku is very underbaked, to put it lightly, turned into a quick gag that gives the two characters no room to actually explore anything that matters. This man had to face the reality that his careless attitude endangered his beloved pupil, and all we get from it is a joke. So, this plot point too has all of its preparation and deliberate narrative structure devalued as its consequences are confined to superficial and breezy moments that ultimately don't deliver on the potential these ideas promised. So, Villain Hunt fails to deliver on the two narrative beats it absolutely had to: Deku's mental state and the broken post-war world. It does that by giving neither idea time to breathe, condensing it to the bare minimum and always moving ahead at 500 miles per hour. Thus, it underdelivers on the consequences these ideas promise in their earlier stages, breaking the so far established style of MHA structure in favor of a style that heavily relies on just speed, moving forward, and being cool. These are the two.
This is another really big reason why
so many
I hate the teapot.
Let's list some for fun. Hawks is established
It's
from the get-go
just
as
mostly
being
grind
defined by
work,
his work.
really.
His entire life being usurped by his job for HPC, and by extension his prowess with
I compared it to Animal Crossing, but like,
also immediately communicates
Animal
his ways
Crossing
are extremely
is mostly just
fire.
grind work as
Thus
well
setting
in
up
order
the
for you to
danger of
build your
Hanabi
nice
eventually
beautiful
face
houses
Nami
and whatever.
is linked to him within the first chapters of Hawk's appearance due to their collaboration. This danger is made real as they do end up clashing in battle, which results in Nami brutally burning Hawks, leading to a dramatic panel in which Dark Shadow declares that there is nothing left on his back. This seems to be a clear setup for Hawks having lost his wings permanently, as only his feathers are confirmed to regenerate, not the stems. But instead, they grow back almost like new. This further removes any consequence of
What?
Bobby's actions during the war, and makes the event less impactful to characters that actually matter. Endeavor's life has been entirely derailed by his perceived inferiority to All Might. It is this feeling of never being able to catch up to him that led him down a dark, abusive path. A path which ruined the lives of his entire family and created a monstrous villain. In Villain Hunt, he discovers that All Might's superiority was neither inherent nor earned, and was instead a transferred power that instantly made him nigh on invincible and put him into an unreachable echelon by default, thus making all of Endeavor's life and suffering kind of pointless. Endeavor has, somehow, no thoughts on this. We are given no reaction, no payoff, nothing regarding what should have been a shocking moment that would have opened the door for some interesting characterization. All Might's story is inherently tied to Endeavor, and yet this enormous piece of info just doesn't seem to matter to Engie initially. We are given the tiniest crumb regarding this dynamic one arc later, but by this point, it's too little, too late. The arc makes it a point to show students how
Enhanced Animal Module 75, absorption test.
Gotcha. Things are about to get dicey.
Ninjutsu! Stay clear. Animal test 63.
By extension, only for him to now not matter. Gran Torino is dramatically impaled by Shigaraki during the war so hard the earth shatters beneath him, and then he passes on escape to Deku as he lays broken in the hospital bed. that he isn't dead. Or rather, the series just forgets about his existence, never actually following up on whether or not he croaked. This is so weird because it diminishes the weight and meaning of the cape, while also making Shigaraki look so incompetent that he couldn't even kill one old man. And there is no reason to just not confirm he died. What the hell? Yami is continuously hinting
Dang it.
Stand clear.
insider knowledge regarding HPS and clocks.
Here comes the catch.
Animal hypostasis and boom boom! Ooh.
Towards heroism.
Ja. 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 Inadmissible evidence! Ja.
This is
Ja.
later, however, just him having a bunch of unnamed
Incinerate! Ha. Ja. Ja. Animal test 6308. Yeah. Absorption test.
Busted.
Cha.
A Rocky Corridor moment
Boom
right there,
boom! Ha.
apparently.
Ha. Ja. Ja.
This might seem like a setup for something interesting.
Animal test 6308.
Off screen. This isn't like story breaking, it's just plain weird. Why would you even bother having her split off and then mention specifically that she's separate from them now? If it just isn't gonna lead to anything, why? Destro, Kupress, and Dr. Garaki all leave the story with seemingly no further plot relevance to be had. They are arrested and not mentioned again thus far. Even as the villains attack and break open 7 prisons all across the country, none of these 3 up to this point fairly relevant characters are given even the briefest mention. Again, not the end of the world, but just bizarre. Overhaul is broken out of prison, which immediately screams relevance. He was the main villain of a massive arc in the past, after all. Even unarmed, his reintroduction into the story should bring with it something at least. Instead, he bumbles about and is captured again without doing a single thing. Even Deku's speech to him isn't really anything of note. So, what was the point of breaking him out in the first place? Who knows? The series definitely doesn't. The common trait all of the mentioned and the numerous unmentioned examples have is their priority. Move forward to the next cool moment at all costs. No matter what pre-established subplots or character motivations may weigh it down, the narrative just has to keep moving no matter what. Things like Hawks' wings or Endeavor's opinion on One for All are just distractions from what matters, moving forward and being exciting. This central attitude continuously detaches and diminishes the concept of consequence within the various plot elements, and turns the series into a fast and thrilling fireworks show at the cost of ignoring many of the underlying ideas and deliberate prep work that made the series what it is. This dogmatic devotion to always moving to the next cool thing reaches its most hilarious extreme in chapters 316 and 317. In 316, Deku and a gaggle of pro-heroes locate and infiltrate a mansion said to be one of All for One's hideouts. Unfortunately, the mansion is rigged, and the chapter ends on a cliffhanger as the entire house explodes with our boys inside. They obviously can't die, plot armor, but naturally, chapter 17 starts with an exciting montage of Deku saving the... No, wait, sorry, I had the notes muddled up. Chapter 317 starts with all of them fine, sitting in a warehouse, acting as if nothing happened besides briefly mentioning that Deku saved them thanks to Danger Sense. What would have been a great opportunity to show off Deku's mastery of his abilities, as well as justify the respect the pro-heroes have for him, is entirely shafted in order to move forward once again. The explosion simply didn't matter and was just another cool cliffhanger. This isn't the arc's greatest sin by any means, but its blank-faced absurdity and nonchalant pace make it extremely funny, like something I'd expect out of Family Guy. But it's not just consequences that Villain Hunt diminishes. In some cases, it manages to muck up preparation and deliberation as well. And wouldn't you know it, confined within Villain Hunt is a secondary mini-arc that shows us an extreme example of how this new structure can backfire and fail on basically every front imaginable. Now, before I get the usual smug comments, I am aware that some consider this an arc entirely separate from Villain Hunt, and I think that's fair. But for the purposes of this video, I will be treating Stars and Stripes as an attachment to Villain Hunt, because I can and you cannot stop me. As the conflict in Japan is heating up, the country requests foreign help, which stalls at the bureaucracy of the UN. #1 US hero, Star and Stripe, takes a platoon of jets and heads to Japan on her own, as she feels she owes it to All Might, who saved her when she was a young child.
Bruh.
All for One and Shigaraki take this opportunity to face her, as her quirk, New Order, needs to be either stolen or destroyed before All for One's plan can succeed. Let me say right out of the gate that this fight is awesome. Some of the coolest panels in the series, and as far as premises go, a fight on top of fighter jets in the stratosphere is pure peak fictionium. If Rule of Cool were all that matters, this mini-arc is fantastic. Unfortunately, we are cursed with frontal lobes, and thus must have risky things called thoughts. For example, what the point of this arc was. The Stars and Stripes arc sets out to essentially solve two issues. For one, it explains the absence of international action in the next big war. As the next fight with All for One looms, the series seemingly wants to avoid having to utilize foreign heroes in battle, so it needs a way to explain their absence, which is done by having Star's defeat scare off any international support. And secondly, the arc endeavors to address New Order, Star's quirk, which is literally plot-breaking, an ability that can effortlessly rewrite the rules of reality. The story can't progress without dealing with this power, as its continued existence would result in an instant win for any side that has it. It would kind of be a time-turner, like in Harry Potter, so to speak, an element that should be the instant solution to anything, and anytime it isn't on screen, you should be asking, why aren't they using New Order? So clearly, it needs to somehow be dealt with. So, the arc sets out to solve two problems and
The one before you is...
Good writing 101, right?
Encounter...
Yeah, except neither of these problems needed solving. And that is because neither of them existed before the arc brought them up. The presence of international hero associations has always been light in MHA, to say the least. What little we did hear of the outside world continuously painted the picture of disharmony and overall bureaucratic stagnation. No nation seemingly being able to agree how much agency and authority heroes should have. This alone is already a good enough base to counter the potential question of where are the foreign heroes during the big fight. The idea that the UN Council will be too slow to react in time is by itself perfectly reasonable. Additionally, All for One mentions that his uprising has caused all of his former associates across the globe to raise hell, meaning that nations are now concerned with their own domestic issues. Both of these were perfectly fine explanations as to why international help will be unavailable. The entire idea of foreign heroes going rogue and helping Japan is only introduced by Star. And her quirk, New Order, that absolutely needed to be dealt with, it is not mentioned once before the fight starts. Star herself isn't either, as she's very sloppily retroactively given an identity in a movie-exclusive extra. So, this arc is so ultimately pointless that the only narrative solutions it offers are to problems it invented in the first place. It is built on no foundation other than the haphazardly manufactured issues that didn't exist 5 seconds before the arc starts. It is the definitive rejection of the series' original structure. There is no preparation, as all possible connections to pre-established story facts are ignored in favor of just making shit up. There is no deliberation, as no one involved in this arc intrinsically needed to be there, since their reasons for existing in the situation are entirely fabricated as the arc goes on. And consequence, the final piece of the trifecta? The story goes through absurd lengths to make sure this fight didn't matter. New Order messes around a little, but disappears and only destroys a handful of quirks that are non-essential to All for One's plan. And that's it. This omission of relevance is so baffling that the series managed to confuse numerous numerous translators into accidentally giving it importance. Both official Spanish translations and some English fan translation.
Oh, I don't need to equip this anymore. Oh, right, the parametric transformer. What was I talking about? I gotta pee first, okay? I'll get back to it. That's the problem with long series, ain't it? That's why I don't wanna dig my feet too deep into making stories that have the potential to last long. That's why I plan so far ahead of whenever I'm making a story. I plan them right up until the very finish line, so I know what the start, the finish, and everything in between is. Because eventually, you as the writer, you as the creator, as well as the people enjoying your creation, when something goes too long, people just get tired. You know, something overstays its welcome. That's just the sad truth sometimes. But unfortunately, either due to external or internal reasons, lack of experience, maybe budget, maybe the company you're part of is forcing you to keep writing regardless, or whatever else, other reason, petty, major, minor. You're gonna keep writing. The show's gotta keep going.
Motion to compel.
You're supposed to be burning. You kidding me?
Away I go! Ta! Boom boom! Ha!
All the places I could have placed this.
Absorption test.
Araki was seemingly aware of
Get out
that.
of here!
But luckily, JoJo I don't think suffers much from the... It is a very long series, but since it's segmented into parts... I mean, I guess the closest it ever got to that problem was
Animal test 6308.
with the Toru arc, the final boss of part 8. That was a very, very long fight. It was basically the entire third and final arc, act, half, of part 8. And wow, what a crazy and long fight it was. Most chapters, and considering the monthly releases and the hiatuses, took literal years to finish. Yeah, that's why I was kinda against keeping track of My Hero Academia and just watching the anime as it comes out. And why I don't watch things like Dragon Ball and Naruto. Oh, the Naruto is finished now, so let's keep the money flowing, guys. Let's make a sequel called the Boruto. In the end, I just don't enjoy shits that's way too long. That's just my own preference. So I'll never watch One Piece or Naruto or whatever. I like my episodes to be 12. No longer. 12 episodes are just fine. A bit off topic. At some point, you just gotta realize it's time to stop. It's not really a harsh reality. It's just something you need to know you gotta do. Ending something isn't a bad thing.
This realm is
If you
truly...
do it right, an ending can only be one thing, and that's a happy note, rather than a sad note. So back to the topic of this goddamn shit. So yeah, Animal Crossing and the Teapot are similar enough, but like in Animal Crossing, that is the entire game. The next room I
If you ever
have
have
is
any-
easy enough to make, actually. I don't need to bother. In Genshin Impact, the teapot is one of many things. It's just a sub-feature. Optional. And since it's optional, why should I freaking bother when I can focus on more important shit like trying to get primos? I mean, yeah, you do get primos for decorating the teapot. There's also, like, the main story, you know. And of course, I want to keep invested in that. Yeah. There are passive ways to just get the teapot up to snuff and decorate it, but like, it requires too much time and effort and deliberate actions. Which deliberate actions and time and effort you could have spent somewhere else. in this goddamn game. Literally, this goddamn game. This is a goddamn game. This game is damned by God. Sure, whatever. This works. Oh, he's back.
All for one note that this moment is the late effect of New Order. This is false. The proper translation has him specifically say that not even New Order could do this. Star is so thoroughly removed from the concept of consequence that her only posthumous influence over the
What was
plot
that?
is an annotation
Oh,
about how useless she
it's gone.
was, spoken
Can I
by
go
the
take a
guy
look?
she was supposed to stop. Oh, speaking of, we should probably talk about Potato Man. All for One is the worst thing to happen to MHA. I'm sorry. I know people get very mad at me every time I say it, but there's no two ways about it. He sucks. If there's one single element that has derailed MHA's structure and story the most, one guy that can be single-handedly blamed for what we have now, it's this ballsack-looking fuck. Within his original appearance in MHA, All for One held a wonderfully elegant narrative position. Him
I
and his
can't
counter,
see.
All Might, represented the old guard, titans of a bygone era where singular titans could actually exist in the first place. All for One was, like All Might, a crumbling monolith. This mattered because much of MHA's story seemed to focus on the idea of passing the torch, as All Might sought to leave the world in the hands of someone who could maintain what he had built. This reveals itself as ultimately futile, though, as All Might was an unrealistic perfect hero that no one could replace. Thus, the modern era has to produce a modern idea of heroism and the unity between public and hero.
There
For
we
All
go.
for One and Shigaraki,
Confirmation.
this transitional conflict is mirrored on the villain's side. All for One is a perfect, unyielding evil, and Shigaraki's generation must find a way to move on from the legacy he left behind. It was a very cool thematic link that gave the story a strong direction.
Oh no,
and
wait, that's
identity,
because I'm the
especially
one in
considering that
co-op.
MHA
God,
itself,
this is
having
annoying.
started only shortly after the immensely popular
Are you-
Naruto ended, was also extra-diegetically
Oh my
about
God.
taking up the mantle of an older,
Another
greater
reason to hate the
master
teapot.
and trying to become its own thing in the wake of that series' legacy. Now, the thing about transitional narratives is that they actually have to transition. The entire idea of passing on the torch hinges on that torch actually being passed, which means that the old needs to eventually fuck off and give the stage to the new, so it can show if it lives up to the task. All Might does this in pretty much the best way imaginable. One last hurrah, one last great fight, but then he's out. Not dead, but narratively greatly diminished in his influence. And maybe even better, he bows out too early. Deku is not yet ready, the world isn't ready, but they all have to cope, and it's that copium which leads to interesting choices and story beats. All for One initially also follows this concept, but his
I don't
incarceration
remember this one all
essentially
that well.
removing his narrative agency.
Pyro
With
and
him
Cryo,
gone,
don't
the
mind
story
if I
begins building
do.
up Shigaraki and turns him into one of my favorite characters in the entire series. More on that in this video here. But for the purpose of this video, what made Shigaraki an engaging character to follow is much the same as what made Deku engaging. They are both abandoned by their perfect, monolithic masters at a time when they are completely and utterly out of their depth. They are both insecure, incompetent, and now tasked with facing the future without the guidance of
I think I
Superman and
remember this
Satan,
domain
respectively.
now.
These humble beginnings are what make their eventual growth so much more satisfying. Seeing Shiggy, a dumb nerd who could barely utter a coherent sentence upon his debut, stand tall in a crater of his own making, being crowned Grand Commander of an army of villains, is supremely cathartic in much the same way as seeing Deku dismantle Overhaul is. This also, again, plays into the transitional narrative. All For One and All Might seemed like they were perfect from the
Might be
start,
something I need
never
to
really
expect.
growing or changing
I
because there
do
was no
every
need
Sunday
to.
now as well.
This stagnant perfection sets them apart from
Take it
professionals who must struggle
after!
and adapt in order to earn positions and lead their respective communities.
Let's light it up!
Elegantly identifies this transition as more practical, realistic, and by implication more productive and
Diana Special! My apologies! Cross over!
Which I didn't need to.
supported.
See?
And Shigaraki carry this narrative together very
Oh,
effectively.
we're still waiting.
They take the stage, severed from their masters. And then All For One comes back, hijacks Shigaraki's body, takes over the plot, and becomes the actual, real final villain.
What? Why? Why?
Might be the most frustrating single development in all of anime. It happens right before Villain Hunt.
That's just like with Persona or
Villain Hunt goes on.
Embrace the ice! My
the other
apologies!
fucking anime, another fucking RPG. Oh, it's not actually Adachi that's the main villain, it's fucking Narukami's wife or whatever.
All of his mannerisms and in Japanese,
Right!
specific pronoun unique to All For One with the show. Shigaraki is,
2
a few
minutes.
outbursts aside,
Annoying.
completely gone. Alright, let's try and be generous. There are possible benefits to this twist. Shigaraki being a likable and cool character gets usurped by someone who is irredeemably evil feeds into Deku's desire to save Tenku, strengthening the specific plot point in turn. Additionally, as we were talking about transitional narratives, maybe the point wasn't that Deku and Chigi would offer individual solutions as to how to move onwards into a world without their masters, but instead, it was maybe about the heroes that will ultimately triumph because All Might was able to let go and allow Deku to lead the future, while All For One couldn't help himself and clung on way past his time, which might end up being his demise. In a way, this replaces the transitional narrative we've had before with a new one, additionally focusing on Tenko as someone to be saved rather than the main villain. While this would be a functional thematic evolution, it has several issues in my opinion. Here is the tough pill to swallow that no one online wants to talk about. You can write a technically competent, thematically coherent story and have it still fail if it isn't also enjoyable and playing to the story's strengths. Yeah, I think you can make the argument that All For One's takeover can fit into narrative Launch and explore as Shigaraki was. When Shigi outsmarted and triumphed his enemies, it felt grand because
I can't vaporize or not flying with Hutao. So I hate them.
goals were founded on a tangled web of impulses, trauma,
Everybody
and
stand back! See? Cross over!
One, on the other hand, is just a bad thing. Don't get me wrong, I do think he is kind of funny in how he never lets any problem ruin his mood, and how the story jiggles and bends and every bad thing ever originate from him. But beyond that, it's not all that interesting.
Ain't having your dream. My
No
apologies.
actual backstory, no personal ties to any individual character. Sure, he's not as kino as Shigaraki was. Something I really appreciate is that the story gets less interesting every time something is revealed to be All For One's fault. My reasoning is that one of MHA's strengths to me is its focus on grander issues that you cannot solve by punching. The biological inequality of works, the biases within the community, the resulting societal abandonment. These are fundamental conflicts that require social action and awareness in order to solve, and thus fall out of the usual market shown as problems, and that made them fresh and vigorously explored. This is also why Shigaraki was such a great main villain. Instead of being the mastermind behind all of those problems, he was their ultimate victim, their dysfunctions of this world taken to a devastating extreme. Beating him didn't mean solving the world's issues, which made the world feel bigger and more separate from our main cast. Beating him simply meant that you had resolved to take the first step. All for One, meanwhile, is the puppet master, and with every plot thread he gobbles up, more and more of these interesting issues are condensed into a man who you can very much just punch until he stops moving. While he didn't invent quirks, yet, his influence on the story and the series' lore tightens every chapter, and so, more and more of the story centers around meeting this one guy instead of actually addressing the problems that created the rest of the Rogues Gallery. This collapses the larger, more inherent issues of MHA's world and makes them, in typical shonen fashion, dependent on just the bad guy, which robs them of that grander feel I just described. Shigaraki was an interesting villain because he was the result of the inherent dysfunctions of the world systems, and defeating him was never going to solve them. It was just a step along a much harder, socially relevant path. All for One is, by comparison, uninteresting because he is the origin of those
holy shit, I forgot about these
solutions down to just beating this old man very hard. So even if All for One cheating his way into the story is the point, that doesn't change the fact that he derails a much better character in order for it to happen. In general, something being the point cannot excuse the damage
I don't know what's
done
happening,
if
but
the point leads to an overall less enjoyable product. But all of this is under the assumption that this takeover is technically and narratively competent, and that its issues lie in the fine print, which is not the case. All for One's reintroduction causes numerous structural, narrative, and even just logical problems.
well, it's not too late for me.
Structurally, it removes Shigaraki, a very major character, from the story entirely, and thus, once again, breaks the three-piece structure we discussed earlier in the video. All the preparation that went into making Shigaraki a competent villain, and all the deliberation of how his journey paralleled Deku, are disintegrated and swallowed into the gullet of this sentient scrotum. And
okay, cool.
well, they are simply obliterated into nothingness.
Oh, that's still
Remember
200 Primos.
His frankly shocking death and how heavy of a blow it was to the League? And especially, how excited people were to see how Shigaraki would react? Regardless of if he would care deeply or reveal he doesn't give a shit, it would make for a defining moment for not just our main villain, but his relationship to his comrades, and could be used to catalyze different relationships within the League of Villains. Well, too bad we don't get to see that. Shiggy has, as of yet, which is, by the way, over a year, maybe already 2 years after Twice's death, not yet expressed any thoughts towards the loss of Twice. In fact, it is unclear if he was informed of off-screen, or if he straight up doesn't even know. Shigaraki is left